Hi again then guys, and welcome to another instalment of Days Gone By, in particular for this episode on Gran Turismo 6, and this is a car which technically is a classic, but at the same time it's not a car which you would always think of as a classic. There are certain vehicles which are kind of out of time to some degree. You don't think of them as coming from a specific time period or era, you just think of it almost in a vacuum, just on its own. And for me, this car is like that, the Ford RS200, a notorious car from a rallying point of view in the Group B category, the ill-fated and extreme Group B category. And as far as Group B cars go, even in rally form, the RS200 doesn't really look as extreme as some of the others do, like the Renault 5 or the Peugeot 205 T16, or even the Citroën, I believe it was a BX or whatever model it was back then. This one is relatively understated and restrained as far as its design. It shares some components with the Sierra. The windshield, for instance, is from the Ford Sierra, and the performance is very strong. It's faster than any of the Cosworths of the time. The engine is a 1.8 litre, it's already turbocharged, it's mid-mounted, and it is, of course, all-wheel drive, as you'd assume it would be. And this car is very expensive. As far as classics go, it's a 160,000 credit car. And that's not just on Gran Turismo, it's also very expensive on Forza as well, because of how historically significant it is. It's one of the most iconic rally cars, one of the most iconic homologation cars, more specifically in this case. And personally, I would say very strongly, in fact, that the road version, this version, is far better in terms of its all-round usability on Gran Turismo than the rally car is. The rally car's not bad, but it costs well over 1 million credits. That's understandable. Again, it is iconic. This one, though, is much more affordable, it's faster in a straight line, and, of course, being a road car, it's allowed into more events. If you take out the rally car online, chances are people are going to say, don't use that car in this lobby, use a road car, whereas if you pull out the road version, you've got a much better chance, a 100% better chance of being allowed to use it. Now, with that being said, what do you actually get from the RS200? Because in its little world, it's got some heady competition. The 205 T16 is very good. The Renault 5 is good in its own way. The Lancia Delta is pretty good as well. So how good is this one? Well, that 1.8 engine can be tuned up to impressive power, but it's not as extreme as you might hope. It's got 484 horsepower, 348 foot-pounds of torque. But that's in a car that weighs 1,092 kilos, which isn't super light by any means, but it's certainly not heavy. That's just under 1.1 tonnes, British money, and that means that the horsepower per tonne is 443. That's the kind of horsepower per tonne that you'd expect from a decent tuned sports car. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good start, especially in a very compact all-wheel drive rally-bred machine, and one which at the end of the day was notorious for being not only dangerous, but dangerous because of how fast and how extreme they were. That bodes pretty well for how good this car could be. Now, I have done, for instance, a drag tune for this car in the past, and despite the fact that it's got far less power than many of the other classic performance cars, especially if you compare it to like American ones, what it does with the power and the spec overall that it's given is pretty impressive. Off the line, it can dispatch most of the other homologation cars. It's faster off the line than the Delta, it's faster than the Audi Quattro, which I personally prefer. In fact, I prefer the Delta as well in real life, but it can easily beat both of those. It's a monster off the line. And for top-end performance, although it's not phenomenal, it can do over 200 miles per hour without NOS. That's pretty good. Again, it means that you can use this car on tracks which do need better top-end speed. But one of the best things I would say about the RS200 is not just that it's fast, which pretty much goes without saying, but that the PP level, even in maximum tune form, is actually surprisingly reasonable. It sits at 533. It could so easily be up around 550, 560, maybe even 570 because of how good it actually is. Is it OP at this level? Not really. I'd say it's pretty well placed, because although it is fast, it's not as strong mid-range as some others. It's very good for low-end grunt, very good. Top end, it's good once it gets there. Mid-range, not so much. And of course that does depend on the turbo, but generally speaking, other classic sports cars, especially ones with similar levels of power, can outrun this one for mid-range and top-end performance. But if you use it on the right track, the combination of incredible power and grip, but simultaneously in such a compact car that is very light on its feet, it does not feel as heavy as it is. It's not heavy, but it doesn't feel as heavy as it is. It feels like a 900 kilo car easily. It means that on tracks where you can not necessarily worry about top-end speed, you can make very effective use of a car like this. And again, that goes for many of its rivals, because at the end of the day, rally tracks are very tight, very twisty, and very technical. So on a track such as here at Ascari, that's where this car really shines. And surprisingly, or perhaps surprisingly, for a notorious car like this one, it actually handles really well. It's a forgiving car, surprisingly beginner-friendly, and I would say it actually has better handling than the Delta or the Quattro, in particular over the Quattro. And none of them are bad, but this one I would say is even better. The handling is, well, as I said, very forgiving. You can throw the car through corners. The fact that it has the attitude of a much bigger, more powerful car in what is essentially not a very big and not all that powerful car means that it's pretty useful overall. It is expensive, and I would say that's probably the biggest downside that this car has, because 160 grand is a huge price. That's a lot more than the Delta. In fact, it's a lot more than the Quattro, the Peugeot, and the Renault as well. But given what it can do, even though it's not premium, so you don't get that detailed interior, etc., which is a shame from a collection point of view, I would recommend checking it out. Most people who like the RS200 probably already have tried this car, but if by some chance you haven't, I would recommend doing so. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.